It's just the way it is.
Mike Leng. Hello, brother.
Hello, mate. How's it going?
Looking beautiful as ever, mate.
I wouldn't go that far, mate, but thank you very much.
How the hell are you?
Great, mate. Great.
Cool.
I would normally have said I'm happy that the world's getting a bit back to normal, but I think I've started to jinx us all by saying that every time I speak to somebody.
What do you think's going to happen, man? We having a lockdown?
Don't know, mate. To be honest, I don't think I'm adequately educated enough to make that prediction. I don't. It's one of those things, isn't it, where the genie's out the bottle. I don't know if they'd ever get it back in. No.
If you were a betting man, where would your money be?
Probably. I'm becoming cynical in my own age, so I'm going to go for yeah. I think that they will, because I think that there's a lot. Like, obviously, this is well out of my realm of expertise, but I think there's a lot of people who make too much money off it not to do lockdowns.
Potentially. I if I was betting man, I'd go January to March lockdown, but we'll see. Yeah, I hope it's not a Christmas, dude. Last year was a big hit for everyone, wasn't it? So I hope we get a Christmas at least.
I think we will. I just purely because I think there's that many people that I don't think they'd be able to get everything up and a furlough back in place and do it all. They just wouldn't put too many people out of business. Like,
yeah, and how compliant do you think people? I mean, we'll talk about compliance a lot today. I think people would proper kick off. Well, it's happened in Austria. I think Germany even's kicked off. So I reckon we'd have a little bit more of a rebellion this time if they said Christmas is done.
Yeah, I think, and I've kind of noticed it, like going, obviously, you know, masks are mandatory now, like being in shops and stuff today and yesterday, I've kind of seen, well, it's about a 50-50 split here. Before you'd see the odd person that wasn't wearing a mask. And now I'd probably say it was like half and half, where in the shops I've been in the time I've been in, that there's a majority of them, like I was like, all of you people aren't exempt. Like, I think that you're just not wanting to do it anymore. You've just kind of like,
yeah. Well, I was in town today, and I forgot my mask, man. No one said a thing. Yeah. No, none of the shop people said anything to me. I just forgot it. I forgot all about it.
Yeah,
but it wasn't that apparent because most people weren't wearing them anyway. So you kind of forgot that it was a new enforced rule.
Yeah.
So crazy. So, dude, you reposted something on my on Instagram today, and you said I'm on the Better Man podcast. I'm not sure I can contribute much to being a better man or something along these lines, but I can certainly contribute towards nutrition.
Oh, so, hopefully.
I hope I'll do, but I know you well, so I think you'll be great at that. But do you know what, dude? As soon as you mentioned that online, I thought, you know what, the two for me, like, they go hand in hand. So if I'm working with a guy in any position, whether he wants to get his ass in gear, get fit, get healthy, improve his mental health, improve his energy, like the base foundation that I always start with is something called palate. So, you know, what are you eating, what are you drinking, and what are you watching? Yeah. Those kind of things. So, like, in your experience, you must have seen the effects of like decent, good nutrition on men's mental health and the way that men feel on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah. So it's totally a weird one. So, like, obviously, like a big part of like my job and what I do is helping people put the right kind of stuff in the mouth that gets them the best performance. So, and that's generally with athletes, generally within, and probably any, you know, in a massive range, but all the way up to like the top levels of sport where it really, really does matter. But the other side of it is that's really interesting me, and I've learned more and more as time's gone on in the business, that it's a very strange one. So it's one of the things when it comes to, like, you know, discipline and consistency, which, you know, we'll talk a lot about tonight, I imagine, but it's one of the easiest things to control, like, theoretically. You know, so if there's something bad for you, you just don't put it in your mouth. Most of the people listening to this podcast and most of the people that I talk to are adults, and they kind of know, like, an apple is better for them than a Mars bar. But so theoretically, you should be able to make a conscious, disciplined decision not to put the Mars bar in your mouth and put the apple in your mouth. But in practice, it's very, very different. So when it comes to that kind of like bit where, like, you know, making that disciplined choice, it's a really like interesting kind of area for me, especially when it comes to like general population type people, that it's that mental type of thing that leads to those kind of decisions, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different game when you're playing with the top class athletes, right? They've got a goal. Often they've got a deadline. Whether they like their nutritional intake may not be that relevant. They're going to do it because they want to do well and they want to thrive.
Yeah, you can't deal with obviously you're talking about the top 1%ers, like who are, they are very, very disciplined people in regards to their goals. So if it is an athletic endeavor, like they would literally do anything to achieve that. So if they don't eat that, they don't eat that. If you told them to drink piss and howl at the full moon, they would probably do that if it thought that they would win gold medals. But like, there's a lot of athletes that I actually deal with and dealt with over the years, like outside of their sport and their discipline, like they don't really achieve anything else in life, or you'd think that someone who was like unbelievably successful at sport had the rest of their life together, where sometimes it's just radically not the case, because these things don't correlate to their goals. It's seen as unimportant, so they don't do it. So it's a bit of a funny thing. But yeah, when it comes to nutrition, it's one of the things where small changes, like kind of stuff that people really focus on, like the general population, like focus on like supplements or this way of eating or that way of eating, like it'll really make like a tiny percentage of difference. But that's the kind of that's massive when it comes to the top levels of sport. Like a 1% difference at the Olympics is the difference between, first and last. So it's a very interesting thing when it comes to looking at like general population type stuff versus like top athlete stuff.
Yeah, and what you've just mentioned there is quite common. This whole could be disciplined in one area and not the other. Well, if we think that, I guess we agree that what discipline's a skill and a trait, you can learn it, right?
Yeah.
It's very rare that you meet a guy who's got all of his disciplines in order. So good in business, good in fitness, good health, good relationships, good balance. It's very rare that you find that. I think it's quite normal. Like successful businessman, most of the time, overstressed, highly stressed, probably overweight, definitely most are inactive. So it's getting that balance, I guess. But I guess the athletes aren't always on the balance scale all the time anyway, right? They might be on the opposite end of the spectrum where
they're
everything's all in, and then their personal life might be suffering for it.
Yeah. Like those people are generally like, when you hear a lot of people talking about leading a balanced lifestyle and things like that, probably a huge percentage of like top level athletes are massively unbalanced in that sense, and they don't seek balance either. Like there was I can't remember who did it, but there was a study that basically asked Olympians like if they could win a gold medal in their sport, would they shave 10 years off their life? And it was like dramatic. Like 98% of them were like, yeah, straight away. Like I would knock 10 years off my life for a gold medal. Where to most people it's kind of like, well, that's insane. Like I would never do that. But yeah, you'll generally find that it's like blast and dust, you know what I mean? So like in their sport, they may be uber successful, but in other areas of life, they just complete the sacrifice, relationships for it, friendships for it, financially for it, like actually their health. A lot of the time, a lot of like athletes at the top level of sport aren't what most people would consider healthy. You know what I mean? They're constantly dealing with injuries and niggles and things like that. There's also the issue of, in some sports, like extracurricular supplements, which is a common thing, like will have a negative impact of health. It can be negated, obviously, but there is like consequences of that as well. So health is sometimes like way down on the list of priorities, like when winning really is the priority, like regardless.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. I'm struggling to think of a top world-class athlete that probably isn't obsessed, which again, some people will hear that word obsessed and think negative. Some people will hear that word and think, oh, that's cool. But that's an interesting question. 10 years off your life to, I guess, get your gold medal and your live stream. I don't know, man. If you're thinking if you get to 80, right, and you've done nothing with your life and you look back and you're like, you haven't lived the life that you want to live, maybe popping your clogs at 70 or 60 would be clearly worth it to most if they look back and go, I'm a fucking Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah. But what's really interesting to me as well is I'm getting on a little bit now. Is I'm kind of the more people that I speak to is how much kind of what your life goal is and changes how you go on. So what your life goal is an athlete at 20, when you're in your prime and coming to the Olympics, well, yeah, I want a gold medal. But when you're on, your deathbed and you've got your family around you, would you trade that gold medal for 5 more years with your grandkids? Or would I know plenty of people athletes who've given up time with, loved ones who've been very ill that they've lost in order to chase and achieve their goal. If they fall short, going back, I'd give it all up in a second for, 5 more minutes with my wife or whatever. So, I'm not saying one's right or wrong. I'm just saying that kind of like it's a really interesting way to look at it, depending on what you are.
Yeah.
I think you just need to be honest with yourself. If you're every goal in life, no matter what it is, whether it's a happy marriage, a successful career, or an athletic one, has a price, and you just need to be honest with yourself and be prepared to pay the price for it. Really.
Yeah. I think some of the answers are there because, like I say, if you speak to most people in the last year or two of their life, they will all pretty much say the same thing. So it's like we know we're going to get to the end, and it will be looking back, hoping that we've made the best out of the relationships. But whether it's innate and it's just intrinsic, we are like chasers, right? We want to achieve. We want to tick things in boxes. We want to achieve our goals. I don't think you can take that away from us. But on this weird paradox, it's like we know that family and friends and relationships is probably going to be the thing that's most important. But it's like that, like I say, it's like that innate drive just to go towards the achievement. And athletes have that in abundance.
Yeah. And it's I think the thing that people kind of like always find it hard to live with is regret. You know what I mean? Like everyone that I speak to, same as you, everyone that you probably speak to who's been successful in life, no matter what endeavor it is, probably has had, large failures along the way, or they may have not achieved what they set out for in particular things, but like they become okay with it. It's the regret that they're not going to like live with. There's a great powerlifter and strongman lives out in Cyprus called Clint Darden, who's a friend who's was really successful. Who I recommend everyone look up, but he's gone through like multiple life-threatening illnesses and chemo and like kept moving forwards and stuff. And he's got a great speech online. It's on YouTube. I can't remember what it's under, but basically he goes on about that. It's go all in once in your life, no matter what it is. Just go all in on something. Can be anything, but literally give everything to one goal once in your life to then say that you've given everything.
Yeah, but do you not think either way regret's going to be there? When people say you shouldn't regret, I think you will, because if you go all in on one thing, that means you sacrifice 20 things.
Yeah, I think it's regrets you can live with. You know what I mean? You're always going to have, like you say, regret. Anyone who says that I've got no regrets, is either a sociopath or they're not telling the full story. So it's just regrets I think that you can live with. Yes, I regret doing that, but if I went back, I would still do it again. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice concept. I hope it works out like that. I mean, looking back now, how old are you, dude?
I'm 38.
38. So yeah, I'm 37. Because you keep referring to getting on. So
that's all right. That
me, man. What you're on about? You're still a kid.
Yeah.
I think you look back even now with a shitload of regret, right? I know I do in certain aspects.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think the same or whether you're just one of these forward-looking people. No,
massively. And I think it was weird that I kind of I never used to till I think I got into my 30s, and I kind of I think I was, to be honest, I think that I was quite lucky that I hadn't really there was periods of my life where I'd gone through adversity and I thought, oh, that's what it is, and I've overcome it. And then when I kind of realized that there was other parts, which a lot of people have probably gone through the last couple of years as well, they've kind of gone, right, okay, this is actually what people were talking about, and I regret bits and bobs and things like that. So
yeah, well, I think we were full of hope when the first lockdown happened because everyone was being nice to each other and looking out for each other, and we were on the same side for about a week.
Yeah, we were all clapping and stuff. And
and that was actually quite cool. It was hard to deny that wasn't nice, but now it feels like it's complete opposite. You've got your 50-50 vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, and everyone just seems, whether it's in our country or America, everyone just seems a little bit at war. When you think we would be coming together a little bit more in times like this, like we did in the first lockdown, it's, there's full of hope there for humanity. I think we've just shat on that.
Yeah. I wish I knew the answer for it. I think that it's just born out of frustration more than anything for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think everybody was prepared to kind of do it and come together for a certain period of time to fix the problem. But when we were promised to do this thing that actually didn't fix the problem, not, and that could be for various reasons or complex issues that are well beyond my grasp. But I think that's kind of what's grinding people kind of out now.
Yeah, I think so. And I think looking at what other people are doing as well. So if I'm fixated on whether you've got the vaccine or not, and I make that my mission to scream it from the rooftops that everyone should be vaccinated, I take my eyes off my own life and my own things that I should be working on. Do you know what I mean? And it's just the quickest way to be angry and resentful when you're just waiting for everyone to get vaccinated and getting angry at the people that aren't following through with it. It's just a ridiculous waste of time, I think.
Yeah, it's something you ultimately have no control over.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I think it's kind of like it'd be a lot better if everybody kind of made educated decisions on themselves and base that on the level of risk or not risk that they wanted to take, rather than thinking, well, I've done this, so everybody should do this.
Yeah, damn right, man. Absolutely.
So,
you mentioned this late 30s curse, dude. Have you experienced any like existential angst in your kind of 30s, late 30s?
Yeah, actually. I'd like to say that I didn't. Like, it's weird that I kind of like, on one hand, like I quite enjoy getting older. But then on the other side of it, I kind of realized that I think when you get to a certain age that you start to lose some people in your life, and, friends and loved ones and family start to deal with hardships that they haven't before and stuff like that. I've got 2 kids now, so that kind of changes your views on some stuff dramatically. And you just kind of like look at everything, and you've got a bit of got extensions. I don't know what the word is to describe, really. I suppose you look at things with a bit more of a weathered eye, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. But what you've mentioned there is good responsibility, isn't it? So I guess when we're talking about purpose of life, like your life is full of purpose, right? Kids and work and so on. Like, yeah, this is where I think a lot of men want to walk away from responsibilities. Like myself, late 20s, early 30s, you think that you don't want any responsibility, but then when you haven't got it, it's that there's your kind of like reasoning behind acting in a certain way. When you've got those responsibilities like you have, Mike, like you're there, man, you ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, I think it isn't. I think it's a weird thing that's kind of like been with our generation, that they didn't have it in generations before, where we kind of like, not was slower to grow up, but men seem like, and this sounds really conceited, but like men seem to be more boy-like for a longer period of time. Like you wouldn't get like, when I was going out, you wouldn't get like blokes in the late 30s and 40s going out clubbing, for example. Like, it would be young people. But now I still know a lot of friends and things like that who want to go out clubbing, who don't want, to kind of like move on with sections of their life and still live life like they were 18.
Yeah. Do you not see that in men's resilience now, though, as well? It's like you say, it's almost more like boyish into their later 20s and even sometimes 30s and 40s. Like, some men just don't grow up, right? It's not unknown. But I feel like that's becoming a little bit more common now, in the fact that, yeah, we are certainly maturing or taking responsibility later in life and trying to avoid it more than ever, for many reasons. But it does encourage that boyish. But we all know a friend of our age, maybe, who's still a bit like a boy, right?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I still love to read comic books and watch comic book movies, so I'm like no one to talk about anybody about growing up. But
yeah, I don't even mean like that, dude. I just mean in behaviors, and it's still good to have that youthfulness about us anyway, and be interested in some of the things. And again, this isn't a judgmental thing, because I know up until my early 30s, in fact now still, there's still things that I will like throw the toys out the pram on stuff and act like a little child. Do you know what I mean? Because it's the man. All men do it. I'm sure you do as well. There's little tantrums thrown in. But yeah, it just seems to be a little bit more common nowadays than when I was young, when I was growing up.
Yeah, and I think you start to see like the sway of it, kind of like, like yourself and other people like Jocko Willock and stuff like that, who are gaining like popularity in what's something Goggins.
Oh, David Goggins.
Yeah, like that kind of, like that's a bit too much. Like, I know a couple of people who met him in real life, and apparently he's a bit of a prick in real life. I've never met him, so I can't actually say.
Well, he doesn't smile much. Let's put it that way. But
but there's like that hyper kind of like, not yourself, but like discipline. You know what I mean? And going like really aggressively the other way, which I think that we see it in like nutrition a lot. There's never kind of, the truth's always in the grey, but no one ever wants to spend any kind of long periods of time there. They either want like all the way to one end of the spectrum, which is like pushing the fucking button and having no kind of structure to like supreme discipline on the other, and they can't have a burger and a beer. So there never seems to be like, there seems to be like that thing of like people swaying between the two and no one kind of sticking around in the middle.
Yeah, well, I'll certainly have a burger and a beer, mate. I'm definitely not stopping that. But I think sometimes it's easier, Mike, to be on that end of extreme. So I think it's easier. So I always refer to like the Pringles, man. I'd rather have none than a handful of Pringles, because a handful of Pringles means I'm taking down the whole tub. Yeah. So it's almost an easier option to be ultra disciplined. My mentor, Jeff, always said to me, when you're a master of discipline, because you can have like one crisp, put the bag back and wait for tomorrow. Now, I'm not at that level, but I think that's why you get such extremes as well sometimes. People are either the classic on it or they're off it. And that's kind of visible in people's results, isn't it? They're either in good shape or they've really fell out of shape.
Yeah. Oh, and you see it like again in like athletic endeavors and stuff like that, like especially like with fighters and stuff like that during camp or in season for season sports and things like that. People are ultra disciplined and like they stick it out and they're in incredible shape. But then as soon as it's done, they're just like, and it's because I think there's a thing of like you can be uber disciplined for like a period of time, but what's going to happen is when that period's over, you're going to swing all the way back the other way. So it's like when people tell me like, oh yeah, I haven't had like a cheat meal or an unhealthy meal like in 6 months or something. It's in the post for you, because at some point you're going to kind of go, I just want some ice cream or I just want a burger. And because you haven't allowed yourself that regularly or in moderation or allowed that in your life, you'll go the other way aggressively at some point, whether you do it now or in a month's time or in a year's time. It's human nature at some point. If you deny yourself everything for too long, then it's got to come back for you.
Yeah, it's fascinating why people go back. I think there's a variety of reasons. I think people love that goal. So the classic 12-week plan, which is kind of like I love it, and I'm not so sure as well, because I think for some people it really kind of fast tracks them to a way of feeling good. When you play it well in 12 weeks, you can feel good and look good, and you're like, oh, this feels pretty fucking cool. I'm not going back. Or like you say, you can push so damn hard that you're beaten up and you're battered and you're hungry by the end of 12 weeks, and all you want is to return to the comfort that you had kind of when you first started. What do you think's more damaging? Do you think it's more damaging psychologically to keep doing these failed attempts and failed cycles of getting in and out of shape, or do you think it kind of pushes towards physical damage? Because I always notice a lot of guys, it's the saying they're going to do something and not doing it. So saying they're going to stick to the plan this week, having another epic fail, saying they're going to go to the gym 3 times and then not doing it again. I always find that's just as damaging as like the physical things that you can see on the outside of someone's body.
Yeah. So, because you've probably seen it in training and stuff like that. There's a lot of training philosophies that are along the lines of don't miss a lift, or don't miss something in the gym and miss a lift in the gym. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to fail a rep.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said, especially where like for general population, people who are looking to just like lose weight, look better naked, be healthier, that's like realize that like you can't actually fail if you don't quit. Mm-hmm. So like just because like you want a bowl of pasta a day, or you have a burger or a Sunday dinner or some ice cream or date night with your wife and a couple of drinks or whatever it is, like just because you've done that for one day, like you can start again tomorrow. That's not that you failed, you've just had an adjustment in life. And I think it takes a lot for people to kind of realize that they can do this, because they've got that, oh well, if I have that one burger, then I've got to have 50 burgers and like a pizza and ice cream and then it takes them days or weeks to get back on track, because I think that comes through like periods of very harsh restriction. I think it's like getting into people's mind that you need to be disciplined for portions of the time, but it's allowing yourself to kind of like have the things that you want, but then get back on track. And that's the bit that you don't want to teach people that they're failing by falling off stuff, because after so many failures, no one likes to fail something all the time. You're just going to stop doing it. Like, and all of a sudden, like you'll never hear from them again, or they'll stop posting about the fitness journey or whatever it may be, because they've just failed too many times. You need to teach people that this is what we do, the correct behaviors to do it, the habits we're trying to build, but you can have deviation away from the plan, and that doesn't mean failure.
Yeah, I mean, you've just summed up what the Better Man's all about, really. It's saying that exact same message. It's saying, like, you can't not get in good shape, or you can't not improve your health if you just stick with it for a period of time, like
Yeah,
a long period of time. You're gonna get somewhere, like you really are. But it's interesting. I mean, sometimes I think there's so many different reasons why people fall off the wagon. I think sometimes they're underwhelmed as well as overwhelmed. So I think
yeah, yeah,
part of my ethos inside the business is to try and make them win at the start of the client. You know, they, like you say, they don't want to keep failing because they've had enough of that. So you start off really small. So I'm a big fan of, like, you know, until you can work out once a week for 10 minutes. Like, if you can't do that for a couple of weeks, then there's no chance of you working out 3 times. I'm like that with all habits, whether it's meditation, you know, start with a minute. Because again, that is the creation of the habit that I find a lot of guys find difficult. It's not the building of the habit. Because once you're at the gym, Mike, it's like, well, that's part of the hardest bit, right? Slapping on a couple of lifts on each week's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So there's loads of different reasons. What would you say the number one reason that most people aren't compliant to their diet then, apart from the fact that it might be too restrictive? Like, where do you discover if someone's just ill-disciplined and not committed versus poorly strategized towards the plan?
So it's kind of like a multitude depending on what they're looking to do. So for the first, it's kind of finding out what success looks like to them, when they start. And for a lot of people, they've kind of like been just conditioned into thinking it's this 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks to six pack. So they expect results far too fast, depending on what shape they're in currently. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, for me, it's sometimes being openly honest with people. Like, oh, I'm going to, you know, be on the beach in 12 weeks, 3 months. I need to be absolutely shredded for it. I was like, well, you're 6 months to a year away from shredded, like doing things the way we do it, or doing it in a sustainable way that's going to get you there. So sometimes it can be that. Sometimes there is like the underwhelming thing that you were talking about. Like, sometimes you can get a lot of buy-in from some clients by getting a lot of results fast, mm-hmm. and then kind of slowing things down. So, you know, so there can be that if they're wanting, like, if they need that buy-in straight away from you, go, right, okay, now we're moving, they can have a buy-in that way. There's the other thing as well, that things aren't set up right for them. So like depending on what coach they go to, you know, we've had this conversation, I think, in the past, that nutrition is very culty and weird. So it's kind of like they think that this one type of diet is the only way to do something. So keto, fasting, you know, paleo, no matter what it is. So they try and shoehorn themselves into that diet. They can be very restrictive and disciplined for a short period of time, you know, 3 to 4 weeks maybe, and then they're going to start falling off the wagon, and then they think they've failed and it's not sustainable for them. So it's finding out what's going to be sustainable for them. Now, a great thing that you mentioned there, obviously, like building habits and, you know, making sure that we can like have some things in place before we move on to the next thing, which, depending on where people are, like if they've never ever done any kind of healthy, you know, their idea of, you know, getting protein is chicken and chicken nuggets, then, you know, you need to start slow. There's a couple of guys that talk a lot about like what you mentioned there. There's a coach called John Berardi who, like, I can't remember the name of his company now. He has basically where he starts people on saying, right, you've got to drink 2 liters of water a day. Till you can drink 2 liters of water a day for a month, we don't do anything else. Till you get 30 days in a row, that's it. And then they add one thing every month. So really similar to you. Then there's a good PT who used to train out Westside called Jordan Sire, who's become quite popular on social media recently.
Yeah, trainer, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. Yeah. That's how he kind of got it. But he was actually like a really elite level powerlifter from Westside before like he even did any of that. So like, but he's got like something called like the consistency calendar. So basically, he's kind of like, depending on what it is. So if we say every day you've got to drink 2 liters of water and eat 150 grams of protein, or, you know, you've got to train 3 times a week and drink 2 liters of water a day. And then you put like marks on the calendar for everyone that you managed to hit. Like, till you hit 30 days in a row with hitting every single week how you're supposed to, we don't do anything else. What we build is consistency, you know, and consistency, I know it's really cheesy, but consistency kills. And that's what you need out of clients for it to be a success when it comes to a plan. Like, you need to find a way for them to be consistent for the majority of the time. Okay. Whether that 80%, 90%, whatever it is. And that's where people fall. Like it's the building the consistency bit, which sometimes maybe longer than what they want. It's like living in that grey area that gets results, like compounded interest in finance and stuff like that. It's the same kind of deal.
Well, you've mentioned the word honesty, and I think that's important when when you're on a call with a client. Like sometimes you can tell that their expectations are way off, and you've got to pull them back in. But yeah, it's a difficult one because they're usually at the highest point of motivation when they've signed up. Right, they've just handed over cash, they're ready to change. They're saying this is it, and then to underwhelm them with like, well, all I want you to do for 30 days is drink 2 liters of water. Like for me, in my experience, most people would be like, oh, is that it? And their motivation after those 30 days has probably gone dwindling, and they're kind of like, already. However, I do agree it's a great system. So if I had the perfect client, for example, that's exactly what I'd do. I'd be like, look, we're just going to beat the goddamn snooze button for the first month.
Yeah.
Until you can get your ass out of bed, we're not going any further. I love that approach, Mike. But I always find speed's important for a client. So that'd be a tipping point where if they haven't seen anything after 30 days, they're gone. Because everything like message-wise through marketing is pretty much, we can do it in this amount of time, this amount of time, this amount of time. Now, look, we want business as well. So we kind of have to keep up with that. I do 90-day plans. They're really popular. They're really good.
Yeah.
Still 90-day block.
Yeah.
It has a deadline. It gives people focus and motivation. I think it's really hard, like outside of that, to say to someone, right, you're going to work with me for a year. First month, all we're going to do is drink water. I think that's a hard sell, even though we both probably agree it's probably the right way to do things.
Yeah. And this, there's a lot of kind of like, I've taught, like, I had this discussion with a lot of coaches and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that I know will do like really like restrictive, big calorie deficit diets for like, say, the first 4 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks, because you're going to get like a massive drop in weight and stuff like that. And then they start to creep calories back up and start to add things in, start to build habits. But after that 4 weeks at the beginning, you get buy-in off the client straight away because you've smashed results out. They've lost 12 pounds in 4 weeks. Like, obviously not all of that's fat, but you've got results. So you've proved it. Like, I'm obviously in a bit of a funny position because most of the people that we deal with now are athletes. So they are generally coming in a very motivated position and have an end date for their plan. Obviously, there's a lot of people that we work with year round, and that's a different thing. But they've generally done 1 or 2 competitions or camps and stuff through us, and then go, right, okay, now I realise there's a benefit to kind of like working year round. And then that's more about building habits. Like, between your competitions and your fights, we need to start building in like off seasons and working on other stuff, which has never been more apparent with lockdown and things like that. Like, the amount of people who were regular competitors when they couldn't train or there was nothing on the horizon just binned everything off immediately. Like, they were just like, well, there's no point.
Yeah, and maybe they're right. If their number one, like you say, if their obsession is winning gold versus being healthy, because like I say, they're not necessarily the same goal, are they? Then, but that's proof that when you take that goal away from someone, when you don't have your eyes fixated on something. So, how do we get general pop to think more target and goal based like that? Because I like goals. I'm a big fan. I don't think you have to be running marathons and shit all the time. But it's finding the importance behind why are you actually going to be willing to do this nutritional plan? Like what's behind it? Because most people have to wait for something pretty shitty to happen, like their health is threatened. Then all of a sudden their values change, their value becomes health. How do you get like a 40-year-old dude who's carrying 3 stone that hasn't had the full impact of the damage he's doing yet? How do you get someone like that who's not an athlete, 9-to-5 job? How do you get someone like that motivated to have goals around fitness and health?
So if they're an uber competitive person, then it's quite easy to start setting goals that they can like beat or better. And you can kind of challenge them on that, and they'll be like, like, let's say we put a step target in for somebody who's 8,000 steps a day or 10,000 or 5,000, doesn't really matter. And then you can monitor their data through like Whoop or whatever kind of tracker they've got, or Apple Watch or whatever it might be, or just a phone. Like, you can then challenge them on that data. And if they're competitive, go, look, like, we've got a deal that you're going to do 5,000 steps a day. Like, you can get that done anywhere, like, in the house or wherever it is. And then if they haven't, you can go, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're letting yourself down. And sometimes people are super competitive, so they want to prove you wrong and get it done.
Yeah.
The other side of it is if people say like 40 plus and things like that, few stone overweight, very inactive, haven't been for years, probably, don't live an active lifestyle, not having got a good diet. like get a couple of biometrics done that will scare the shit out of them. Just get them to buy like a blood pressure monitor from Amazon for a tenner and take the blood pressure. I guarantee it's probably over like 140 over 80. And it was like, right, okay, you're at serious risk of like, like knocking years off your life, like huge chunks of time. Like,
yeah, I still don't think that gets people off their arse, unfortunately. Like,
yeah,
I know it should, Mike, but I think people know they're not healthy. I think people know,
yeah,
and still not enough. The first one, what you've just mentioned, is great. That you versus you thing. So when we talk
yeah,
about competition, I thrive off that as well. So my gym program is modified in a way that each week I do an extra set or an extra rep or lift a bit heavier, and there's some internal competition with myself there. But again, I think getting the average guy who's not got that drive in him to have that you versus you competition, because he's got to get started for that.
Yeah, the other side of it is kind of something that's been like built into us over a long period of time throughout our entire lives. Is accountability.
Yeah.
So this is where obviously coaching comes in massively.
Sure.
Like, especially if you were getting them to measure, like, stuff that you can track, say like a step counter that you can log into that they have to wear, and they can't fudge it and tell you, oh yeah, well I've definitely ate this, or I've definitely drank this, or the data doesn't lie. Like, it's the accountability that they have to get on a call with you, and they have to come through to you, and you have to say, I haven't done this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then obviously it's kind of like, people don't want to do that, and they've got accountability to kind of stick onto it. But then you've got how you coach them and get through that. Now, like, some people do that versus rewards. Like, some people really might, if it's losing weight, buy themselves new clothes, or, it might be a holiday that they've got coming up, or, or a wedding, or, whatever it is. Sometimes it's that kind of like external motivation that people need to be reminded of. You've probably seen like a lot of people see like sticking stuff on the fridge or the mirror, or, something that's really visible to them every single day. Like,
absolutely. And I think the accountability brings support as well. Like, accountability sounds quite harsh sometimes, which it can be. It's supposed to be. It works. But I think just knowing someone's on your team. So if you think, I'm guessing athletes kind of hang around with other athletes, right? So it's normal to be driven and competitive, eat well, train, stretch. Whereas again, general pop, they hang around with general pop. So 9 to 5 office workers go to work with 9 to 5 office workers. So that culture of cookies lying around on the side, cup of tea, Dunkin' biscuits, becomes very normal, and it becomes even harder then to break out that cycle, doesn't it? If your environment is going against everything that you're trying to become.
It is, and generally in those environments, unfortunately, when people start to take steps to improve something, like something they don't like it, or they try and limit them or drag them back. It's just that everybody likes everybody to conform with what they're doing. It's like tribe mentality. Going back to vaccinated and masked and all that kind of thing is a big part of it, So if everybody's getting cake in the office or drinks on Friday and stuff, and like you go to the pub with them and have a Diet Coke or a cup of coffee or something instead of like having a couple of pints or a couple of glasses of wine, all of a sudden they're like, why are you doing this? Come on, it's one slice of cake, it won't hurt, and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of stuff like, oh, people are, they don't want to see you do better than them and all this kind of stuff. I don't think that's necessarily true a lot of the time, because, they probably don't really care. It's just that they want everybody to kind of be in the same boat. And it takes a lot of kind of like strength to be able to turn around and go, well, you know what, I'm all right. Like, I generally say to people, like, if you confront me with that kind of say, oh, look, like, I'm not really bothered about the cake or the beer. I'm here for your company. Like, so if you're going to be a dickhead about it as well, I'm just go. Like, if I'm not going to have a beer.
I was thinking about alcohol when you were bringing this up. Like, it's like, yeah, that's right. Like, you suddenly stop drinking, and most people's life will be quite different, right? If they don't socialize with other drinkers. So it's an identity change as well, isn't it? It's like if you become the guy who wants to sort his health out and decides you're giving up the booze, you may have just changed your entire life, like your entire social circle, your relationship with your wife, like all of it might have been based around the commonality of like, we like a drink.
Yeah, like I know people who've like, met their missus and they've been like, going out drinking and clubbing and stuff like that. And a lot of their relationship was formed on this kind of thing. And when one of them turns around and goes, well, I don't really do that anymore, then it kind of breaks down because it was the main thing they had in common, or how they met and what, a big part of the relationship was based on. The other side of it, that not a lot of people probably talk about, that you probably see a lot more than me, is that especially at like certain levels of business and people doing things like drinking plays a big part of business going for drinks, Friday night drinks, having like lunches and dinners that are business meetings that involve drinks and stuff like that. Like, not quite the same, but like my father-in-law works for Rolls-Royce, like the aerospace people, not the car people. And when he joined the company, they basically say, "Oh, do you play golf?" And he was like, "No, I don't play golf." They went, "You do now." Because that much of our business gets done on the golf course. Like, you have to play golf to be able to like do business. Like, that much of meetings and networking and social thing is on the golf course for this company. So, and a lot of in the culture, especially like bankers or in the business or in tech and stuff like that, business is done over drinks. So sometimes there is that kind of side of it as well.
Definitely, yeah, you're right. I work with a lot of businessmen who have that same issue. It's like that they wine and dine clients until they get their checkbook out. It's quite normal,
Yeah.
They take them to Arsenal Football Club and in the nice luxurious boxes, and they drink champagne and they have nice food, and it's part of the deal. And like, imagine turning around and saying, "Actually, I don't want that food, thank you, and I'm not going to drink." It could alter your career. It could it could change everything for you. So you can see why people go with the flow. And in fact, just us talking about this out loud now, it's so much easier not to make those changes and keep everything the same, even if you are in an unhappy place, because unhappy and known is sometimes for a lot of people kind of like less scary than unknown. But change is also scary for the people around you, isn't it? So if you change all of a sudden, Mike, it affects the missus, right? It affects the wife.
Yeah.
So it's
like big lifestyle changes,
Yeah. Kind of change is like a two-way thing, even if it's not the other person changing. For someone to watch you change, it's going to affect them. So it can, like you say, bring out that what you're doing that for. Or just have a beer, it won't hurt. You can see why that would drag them back into where they want to be.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
It is. This is the thing, though. For like when we talk about getting in shape, me and you both know a nutrition plan. Hitting calories, getting your steps in. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
it's the easy bit. Like everyone knows that they should move their body and they should probably start to watch what they eat. We all know that. But like we said from it's like there's so many layers to this, and not many fitness coaches and nutritionists talk about this. Like the relationship that you have with your partner and their values based on socializing, drink, and food is going to have a massive, massive role in that. So it's like, I think this is why, like, you get your athletes that thrive because they don't give a fuck, so they will do whatever it takes.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's strange that a lot of people kind of like, especially like Gen Pop, when they're looking for fitness advice and health advice and stuff like that, they're looking at like athletes up here, you know what I mean, who are probably young, they probably don't have like external factors on their life or responsibilities, or they've always done it, or they're athletes. They don't have any of these other like external factors that are looking in on themselves.
Yeah.
Because what generally happens is that when it comes to like sport and athletes and things like that, through certain environments, people who can't do it are just weeded out. You know what I mean? Like the amount of people that I've seen, like from other coaches who like send through plans that are just unbelievably just not sustainable. And when people can't follow it, it's like, you're just not disciplined enough, and that's not really true. You're just not being coached. Like, it's just you can't fit it to what it is. But what happens is all the people who can't do it are just weeded out. So you're just left with the people who, want that kind of thing. So it's that grey bit in the middle where nobody's talking about it. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to live like an athlete, like if you are not one.
No, for sure. I mean? Again, for marketing purposes, you can see what I mean. Client, like if we're talking like coach and client relationship here, the coach is probably, it's their job, I would guess, to attract all the people that want to do well, right? So you get these very small percentages of people that do well, and they're the pictures that we see online, but you never see the person who hasn't done well. And like you say, I think it's just giving out generic plans, expecting everybody to stick to the same food diet and nutrition plan. That's never going to work, man, especially if you haven't got it backed up with any accountability, any coaching. So, me just giving you a sheet of paper with a diet on, that most of them are shit and really restrictive anyway. Yep. You can just see from day one you're gonna fail, and I think even the client knows that. They look at it and they go, "Oh my god, I'll give it my best," but they know that this isn't going to be for them.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's stuff like that people don't talk about. So like they may look at the plan and go, "Yeah, I'm happy to eat, 3 main meals, 2 snacks, 5 meals a day, whatever it is." Like of this food. It's all food I like. I've got no problem eating with it. However, it's massively different to what my wife and my children eat.
Yeah.
Like, they don't like any of this. Like, say your wife could be a picky eater, your children could, or it's just massively different. Like, it's like, oh, well, we all eat together as a family, or now this means that I've got to cook all my stuff, then my wife's stuff, and my kids' stuff all separately. Like, this is just like, if I've got to do this like 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, like, it's insane. I don't have this, like, it's just that extra level of friction that's going to cause people to fall off.
Sure, man. But when you're motivated, right, at the point
Yeah.
of that phone call, when your coach says to you, can you eat 5 times a day? And you usually go, yeah, I'll do whatever it fucking takes. And like you say, but that's at the point of motivation. I'm really interested when I work with a client. I'm really interested in, like, give me your worst day, give me your most tired self, give me your most exhausted self, and demotivated self. If you can't stick to what we're coming up with on those days, let's forget it and let's ask for a little bit less of ourselves. So I'm very into that approach of, like, I don't care how you behave when you're on form. I'm really interested on when that motivation goes out the window, what's your lowest level of training? And I know that if they're okay at that point, then they're going to do very well in the future. I think that's really important.
Yeah, me too, because I think that what you're doing there is building how to win in those situations. You're teaching successes at their lowest point rather than when they're at their lowest point, teaching failure. Because then all that happens is you ingrain behaviors as they start to move towards that point. They're just going to think they're failing. So they're going to, like, after 1 or 2 times, when they start to realize that they're getting stressed, oh God, I've missed a couple of meals today, or I did this, they're just going to go, oh, well, forget it for today because I've already failed. Where what we need to be doing is building successes from, like, when they're at the low point. So, when you're at the very lowest, can you just drink like a glass of water a meal? Yeah, I absolutely can do that. You know what I mean? Even if you down it before you start the meal, I'm not bothered what the meal is. Like, down a glass of water before you start the meal. Yeah, of course, we can do that. And then you go from next. Then you're teaching wins, and then people realize that when you reinforce those wins through coaching, like, and be just as enthusiastic about people who, like, can do that at their lowest points to people who are winning gold medals, then that's when you start getting buy-in from clients and stuff like that. It's telling them that they can't fuck it up. They've just got to, like, we celebrate wins, there's no failures kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Winning's a habit, Mike. Losing's a habit as well. This is why it's really important that you're a man of your word. Like, that's when we're talking about self-respect and so on. Like, you need to have a little bit of faith in your own word. You don't need tons of faith in the outcome. Like, that will be what will be. Like, it should be 50. If you set a good goal, let's think about this. It probably should be a 50-50 chance of you hitting it. Otherwise, if it's 100% chance that you're going to get your goal, is it enough to stretch you and push you? But on a day-to-day, but what winning is for me is it's winning each day. So people who are categorized as winners, they just form a multitude of good days in a row. So it's so boring, Mike, like, to tell a client that, well, do you know what? You just need to string that day that you've had together for 90 days in a row, and your body is going to be completely different.
I think that's the problem, though, isn't it? That it's kind of like existed in that gray area where, like, consistency. Like, if you could give any client that you ever had and go, right, okay, I've got this magical pill that you can take. It's not going to give you the body you want. It's not going to give you success in business or anything. But what it is going to give you is brutal, like, never faltering consistency. Like, you would never have a client that ever, like, there would ever be amazing success stories if you could give a client a pill that would just give them brutal consistency with what they wanted, that they never faltered from it. Then everybody would just be unbelievable.
Yeah, and I've seen a bit of this, like, with the guys that I coach, and again, whether this is just because of the style that I do or whether it's it's a pattern throughout, but with guys who are who've started, who maybe are left with very little faith in their own word, they're terribly out of shape. Like, it takes 8 to 12 months. Of course, they've lost some weight by that point, maybe 1 stone, 2 stone. They're active. They're a lot fitter and healthier than they were, but they almost kind of, like, get to this point where they actually have a little bit of belief in themselves, and then when they set goals from that position, their goals are much more adventurous and challenging. It's almost like a introductory phase of, like, dude, like, if you play this game small and win, like, you will get to the point where you're stronger, and then have the confidence in yourself to ask yourself to do more. But this time, you'll actually fucking believe that you're going to do it, instead of this bullshit thing that you say you're going to do every New Year's Day, every year. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost training that mentality of, like, I am a man who says I'm going to do something, and guess what? I fucking do it. What you do, I don't think is that important, to be honest. I think, whether it's one glass of water a day for 8 months, if you've become consistent in your word, the next thing you ask yourself to do, you'll be like, I've got this, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, it's getting out of that habit of telling lies to yourself. You know what I mean? Which everybody, does at some point and stuff like that. You stare at yourself in your bathroom mirror and you lie to yourself about what you're going to do. It's like being self-aware, like stop lying to yourself first. And then
we need some fucking motivational music on in the background because I'm getting pumped. Seriously, I feel like we've just both said some big motivational speech. Put a bit of music on in the background. We'll edit this and we'll get it on YouTube as a motivational kick up the arse.
Yeah, maybe I've missed my calling. I should have done motivational speaking instead of nutrition.
Yeah, but what we're saying makes sense. It's now getting more people to do it, right? It's getting more, because you both probably love putting our before and after pictures out there for clients because we're proud of it. Like, we see what's happened, they've worked hard, we know the story behind it. So I love transformation pictures, but I'd love to get more in depth and say, well, his energy is here now, his mental health is here, he's being nicer to his kids. I'd love to show all that in a picture. Obviously, we can't. But do you think we're contributing towards people having unrealistic expectations, or do you think we're saying, look, this is what you can achieve if you put your mind to it for 90 days?
I would probably say I'm probably on the worst end of the spectrum, purely because, like, when people generally start out in sports, they look to athletes who are in the position they want to be. They see what they look like, how they perform, what they're talking about, which obviously I share as well. When they do well, clients name people in sport, etc. It's good for business to share those people that I work with. But these people generally don't have, 40-hour, 60-hour work weeks, 5 kids, the missus works 2 jobs, like other kinds of stress in their life. It's all they do. Their job is generally, teaching or coaching in the sport that they do, and they compete. Like, that's generally their life. So sometimes it's having conversation with people that come to me like, look, like, and a lot of people go, I've seen you work with so-and-so and so and so-and-so. That's what I want. Like, right, okay, well, what we need to do is come up with something that allows you to achieve your goals where you are. Like, I had somebody that messaged me earlier in the week and they were talking about weight cuts for MMA fights. And they wanted to do massive cuts because, that's what they thought they should do. And I was like, right, okay, so where are you in the sport? Like, it was an MMA fighter. And I was like, where are you ranked, like, in your division, nationally, internationally, or just like the organizations you compete in? And he was like, I'm going into my second fight. I'm not really ranked anywhere. I was like, right, then you've got the wrong end of the stick here. Like, you need to focus on other things first and then looking at that. Like, the guys who are doing weight cuts and, again, are looking for small percentage of advantages at the top levels of sport, you'd be better just to go up a weight class and not worry about it until like you've got some fights under your belt. And unfortunately, that wasn't the answer he wanted to hear, but it was the truth of the matter. So,
do you get a lot of general pop contacting you then saying, like, I want this athlete's result?
No, to be honest, not these days. I did at the beginning part of my career, obviously, because like, obviously, I originally wanted to be a PT, but I just kind of fell in love with the nutrition side of it more than anything. Like, it's just a bit more, like, it was more nerdy at the time. I don't think that now.
You could be more antisocial as a nutritionist as well.
Definitely, yeah. But I'm like, saying that, like, my favorite thing to do is like podcasts and like live seminars, because obviously I spend like such a big part. Like, I do check-ins and stuff with people and all that kind of thing, and like, it's still behind a laptop. Like, I love doing seminars. Like, it's my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which unfortunately has been kind of put on hold for a while.
Yeah, I like it as well. I mean, I love doing the podcast. I love just speaking to people like yourself. I find it fascinating. It's kind of really, especially through lockdown, it kind of gave me a real good energy just to speak to good people. So I find it fun. But yeah, in-house events, they're hard to beat. The energy, you can get with people. I miss that. I'm hoping that next year's got a little bit more of that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, me too. So I don't really coach many gym pop clients these days. I did at the start. I used to do everything from people looking to lose a bit of weight, doing weddings, like pre and post, like pregnancy and all that kind of stuff, and like done like tons of that in the career. These days, though, I'm quite niche, really, and people just come to me for generally sporting activities, even down to the stage where I don't really get people coming to me for like physique type stuff. Like I want to look great for a photo shoot or like bodybuilding or anything like that, which I did like for like that used to be a big part of what I did, but now it's not so much really anymore. It's just kind of like how things have evolved as time's gone on.
Yeah, is part of you swayed towards the athlete end because of the compliance? Because again, it's let's cut to it. It's so much nicer for a coach to be teaching compliant clients because you get the result that people want, and that's our job.
It is, yeah. So it's kind of one of those where when you start off in your career, same as any like strength and conditioning coach or nutritionist, like that's what you look to. You want to be working with clients at the top levels of sport, or, you know, and that's like what you're aiming for, which is does the more compliant. They generally have a base level of knowledge coming to you. Sometimes not always like a good one, but like, you know, a base nonetheless. But the other side of it is it's generally like it's not bad for business, but there's not much money in like sport really until you get like crazy like pro levels. Definitely not in kind of like combat sports that like I work with. There's more money in kind of gen pop stuff. So probably if I went back in time, I would probably like have split the business off at some point and kind of said, right, well, I'm going to have like a gen pop side of it, and like an athlete side of it.
Not too late to do that, mate.
It's not. It's not. You know, I keep looking at it like all the time, and more educational type stuff and things like that. So there's definitely avenues to go. But
I want you to come and help our guys inside the group as well, so they can hand you their food diaries, and you can say, "Yep, change this, eat that." That'd be cool. But I got some of my best results like when I first started, like big epic weight loss results. But the way I did it was just relentless. It was just calorie burn, work. Because as a young child, I don't know if you were like this in your kind of younger days, but I was just so desperate for the people to do well. You kind of almost say to yourself, "Well, just do whatever it takes." You don't think strategically when you're 21, 22. You just want to get the result for the person.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you kind of almost look back and you think, "I'm not sure whether I helped those people. Maybe I did. Maybe, I introduced some fire and energy into their life." But in terms of strategy, ultimately, that's what it does come down to, doesn't it? Compliance and strategy. You've got to have those two things nailed. If 12 months, 24 months down the line, you want to continue to see progress.
Yeah, like I think one of the things, like definitely, like I definitely did that, like or did stuff that was too harsh for people, or like tried to make shoehorn them into the way that I wanted to do stuff, where I'm a lot more flexible now, and that kind of stuff. I think one of the things that I always kind of judge like my own coaching success on is how long people work with me when they come to me and say like, and that can be consistency day in day out, or for every competition, or for every fight. And like I look back and stuff, and I like some people, I was like, God, we've been working together for like nearly 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, and stuff like that. And it's kind of like it's really nice. So having people be able to come back is like quite flattering, really.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I look back and I'd cringe at some of the advice that I was giving out now. If I could.
Oh yeah. To be honest, though, I think if you don't do that, and I'll probably do it again now, like even a couple of years ago, and I'll probably do it for how I am now. I don't think that you're learning and moving on. Like, I think if you look at all the programs that you wrote a couple of years ago, yeah, I was absolutely on it here. Like, you probably haven't learned anything for those few years. So, and that doesn't mean like your base knowledge of what you do, but it could be how you coach. It could be how you set up programming, how you deal with, clients' expectations at the beginning, whatever it is. Like, I think that you definitely need to always look back on what you did with a little bit of cringe. Otherwise, you're not moving forward.
Yeah, I think so. And like you say, I don't think you'd have to look that far back, to be honest. Probably watch this podcast back in a few months. You're like, oh, did I say that? I could have said this. I could have said that. And yeah, well, you should evolve. I'm always trying to learn and get better, because I definitely don't think I've got this game nailed 100%. Because when you're working with human behavior, it's so complex that literally every client that you take on board, you really have to, sit and listen to what they're saying and really dig deep to find out what they value and what strategies work for them. I think that's what keeps it interesting for me. The personal success that you have with clients is pretty cool. And, these little challenges and these obstacles that you have to get around, like they become part of the game and actually quite good fun.
Yeah, I think that kind of like any coaching that you're in, the longer that you go in with it, kind of like the nuances have become more psychologically kind of based rather than what field that you're in. Like you can talk to any coach, whether it be like they might coach business or finance or golf or, you know, whatever it is, that you kind of realize that actually it's really similar. It's like coaching's the same. The topic may change, but the nuances of it kind of like are all got kind of similar roots. Like, there's a quote, like, I can't remember who said it. It was like, it was something along the lines of, when you know when you know something broadly, you see the way in all things, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing that. I probably really fucked that. I butchered it. But basically, when you know something deeply, you can kind of see it in everything. So when you talk to people who coach in other areas, like, God, there's so much actual similarities between what we do. They just topic change slightly. So the more I do it and the more I go on, the more I realize that actually it's why I suppose a lot of people talk about like therapy and coaching being so similar in certain ways, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a little bit different for us, isn't it? Because like, we almost have formulas for most clients now. Like we know that if they get X, Y, and Z in place, they're going to do well. I don't know what you think to life coaching and that field, because it's so open and broad, and it's like it's a different skill set. You know, we can give people targets, numbers, data to hit, and so on. But I think when you go into that element of mindset coaching, self-help, life coach, it's a bit of a different. Well, it is a different skill as a coach.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one. I wouldn't say I was ever against it. I think that it's kind of like, in same in my field, you know, the barrier to entry is quite low. You know, like you see like 20-year-old life coaches, and you think like you haven't had any life yet to coach, like, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. But it's like, it depends what their experiences have been in that time and all that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of variables. Business coaching is a bit of a funny one. I've seen very few where I would actually say that they're worth their actual, you know, salt. Every successful person that I'd probably want coaching off in business are either too busy running a business or like have exited from a business and not really bothered about coaching other people. Like that's different from mentoring where they help people that they know, I suppose, but like actual selling business coaching as a service, like it's a bit of a funny one in my personal opinion.
Yeah. I think it's the titles as well. Like life coach is such a horrible title. Like, I think because you're right, there's 20-year-olds that could help other 20-year-olds, isn't there? There's things some 20-year-olds know that others don't. So in terms of like, could they coach somebody to a better life? Yeah. They could. I think it's the whole these courses, you know, become a life coach in 2 days.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'm a qualified life coach. I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah, and something that like someone else once told me a long time ago, that experience doesn't equal a great teacher. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, like you may have been through, like, you know, like you could have built the biggest business, like you could be Elon Musk. You know what I mean? But you might not be able to coach somebody into getting a business that allows them to leave their job. Like just because you are good at a thing doesn't mean you are a good teacher. Like, you know, great teachers are kind of born, not made. So. And vice versa. Sometimes, like, you know, you get people who are like, say, like, who are great coaches but haven't achieved anything themselves in that space. So, like, Greg Jackson from MMA, who's coached like guys like, you know, George St. Pierre, Rashad Evans, like, you know, the list is massive for him. So it's one of those where, and he never really achieved anything as an MMA fighter, but is an unbelievable coach. So there's no really kind of one rule for everybody.
Would be a terrible mentor or coach, because I think he's so unique and out there. I think the more driven you are, the harder you might find it to coach other normal people, because you're so out there and so driven. It's a little bit like you with the athlete training now. If you went down to train someone who just wanted to lose 2 pounds in the next year, you'd be like, oh, really? Like you might need that now, you know, need that compliant client, that drive. I know I do. I work with guys who want to become better in certain areas, so I kind of need that little bit of fire, and it starts separating you. And I think even the language, and like if you look at your Instagram, you're instantly attracting athletes who want to perform well. And I think we all do that. And the higher up and the more experience we get, the better results we get. Therefore, you start to separate yourself and the people that might contact you, and they become more serious about getting into great shape or improving their life.
But sometimes I think that can be misleading for a lot of people again as well. Like it's much easier to get somebody, for say an athlete at the top level sport, and like tweak what they're doing to get much better performance. If you took if you take a scale from 0 to 100, those guys are at 90 anyway. You're making small consistent changes to get them to the 100 that makes a big difference in their sport. But what's really like you want is, for most people, is from people who took people from like 20 to 80. You know what I mean? Like, that's like a massive step. Like, they're looking at people who are 100 or 90 plus. They're never going to be at 100 or 90 plus because their lives aren't the same as what athletes are. So
Yeah.
they
But
need
I
to
don't
look
think
at like
people put
different
that into
things.
the equation, do they? I think
No.
it's a classic case of if we see someone inspirational, which again is a good thing, like we want to be inspired. It's very rare that people will ask like, well, how did he get there? They'll just be like, I want what you've got. So tell me what he did. Yeah, they won't want to find out step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They'll just want step 10, the result.
Yeah. But it's weird because in certain areas, they look at, unless they can go from, you know, step 1 to step 10 really quickly, they consider themselves a failure in certain areas. But like, I could, like, let's say, go, right, I want to learn to play guitar, but like, if I like in a month wasn't Brian May, I wouldn't consider myself a failure because I am like haven't become one of the world's greatest guitar. Like, I know he's probably not the world's greatest guitar player, but you know what I'm saying, like a world class guitar player. I would know that I would need to learn chords and go through basics, and for me to become like proficient where I can play is going to take years. But some people look at other things and go, well, I need to be able to do this in shorter periods of time. Otherwise, I've failed to do it and can't do it, and I'll be off. But they don't apply it to others. It's a bit strange.
Yeah, but even that example of the guitar, like even if you hadn't touched the guitar, right, Mike, and you wanted to become like a Brian May standard, and I said to you, look, dude, it's going to be 10 years.
Yeah.
To play every day for 6 hours, and you go, yeah, I get it. I still want in. I still don't think you ever learn what it's like until you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think even if you map out the road to someone and say, look, it's going to be tough. You can't booze and get this result. You know, people will nod and agree, but I think until you get stuck in and actually taste it, it's the way we learn, isn't it? You don't learn really from reading. You learn from application, from doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same for people's goals. This is where it's a really kind of like confusing message, because I don't think you should set your client up to fail, but at some point they're going to have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to know the limits, to know, you know, 'cause if you're ambitious, you do fail. The more ambitious you are, the more you fail, because you stretch. The way I see it, it's like something, you know, in golfing where you start and it slowly over time expands. So you start off really small, and then you push the limits. But when you fail after 6 months, it's not so big a deal than failing after 1 day. Because when you fail after 1 day, what a fucking kick in the balls that is for anyone.
Yeah,
most
I agree.
So they need that run, but then at some point, and this is the thing at the skill of a coach, is where they need testing, like really testing. Well, go on then, show me what you can do, and that'll either get the best out of someone or they'll retreat a little bit.
Yeah, I think that goes back to again what you're talking about of like building winning is like a habit though, and a mindset and a skill. Like we teach like in the early days we don't teach failure, we teach success, which might be small successes, and then by the time you've got to testing, they've realised that they may fail the test, but because they've built up such a period of successes, that's 1 in the loss column, but 200 in the win column. So when they look at it and reflect on it, you know what, like you're well ahead of the curve. So you can take the hits because you're building up that momentum. But I think it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've been in consistently decent shape for about 3 years now without doing anything ridiculously good. I haven't worked that hard. I train 4 times a week. I get my steps in most of the time. But it's just become very normal to eat a certain way now. That's it. So if I'm feeling tired, Mike, I'll still eat the same as if I'm feeling good. It's just that much installed in me. And I think you need to get to that level where the actions and the commitments beat the underlying feelings. Because if I didn't train, dude, every time I didn't feel like it, I'd be fat as fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Right, you get it, right? Same as a nutrition plan. If every time you didn't feel like sticking to it, like every time you felt like eating chocolate, I'd be even fatter. So it's kind of like we need to get to that point where you fall back to your level of training. Like it's just normal, tired or not. Like it's normal to have this healthy-ish breakfast. Yeah, but that takes time. So if everyone's doing everything in these 6 weeks, full-on stints, they're never really marinating anything long enough to have installed the habits and the routines.
Yeah, I think again it goes back to kind of that, like where are you on your lowest day? So over time, like that one glass of water with every meal, which is your lowest day where you are, like over a year, like your lowest day and lowest point might be, I'm going to have, 2 out of 3 meals are going to be healthy, but after 2 years, it could be my meals are going to be the same, and that's your low days, your baseline. You've built up wins to get there. It's like like they always say, they've done it like on competition day, like you perform what your worst day in practice is.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is elevate like your worst day in practice to what's better than everybody else's, like their worst days, because that's how you win. So it's that kind of like for nudging the needle.
Yeah, and compliance for me is all about removing most of the decisions throughout the day. So I don't want, and I don't want any of the clients working with me to have to think every meal like, what shall I have now? Like, I think this is where a plan's great, because if you decide what shall I have now every meal, like, well, it depends how you feel. Like, if you feel like shit, you're probably going to make a choice that doesn't serve you or get you closer to your goals. At the end of the day, you're knackered. So, of course, it's easy at that point. If you're just deciding what to eat, oh, I'll reach out for this, I'll grab a takeaway. This is where I really like a plan. So, although it means you might have the chance to fall off it, I still think it gives you the chance to stay on it as well. So, although I don't like that I'm on it, off it kind of phrase, I still think it's good to have from a basic plan. Yeah.
It's like I've kind of told clients that like stuff in the house, like a lot of like say somebody's got a free meal a week, or they have a high calorie allowance on certain meals or whatever it is. So they're like, oh, I'll just buy this treat to have later in the week. Don't do that, because you're going to eat it. Like it's, don't have it in the house. Don't have it as the temptation for it. Like another thing as well is a lot that catches a lot of people out who've got kids is eating food that the kids don't finish.
Yeah.
A couple of chicken nuggets here, some fries, like whatever it is, because it's been ingrained in them not to bin food. You need to teach them, just bin it. Like if you're starting a diet tomorrow and we're starting to plan, oh, well, I've got 2 packs of Mars bars and like 3 tubs of Ben and Jerry's in the freezer. I better eat them before we start. Just bin a lot, like bin it. You've already paid for it. Like, it's, I'm not a big fan of binning Ben and Jerry's. Don't get me wrong, mate. Like, it's
I just say, dude, if my kid left 2 chicken nuggets on a plate, if I had kids, I'm a disciplined guy. I'm still eating the fucking chicken nuggets. If there's 2, mate, there's no way I can resist 2 chicken nuggets just left there on the plate. But it's funny you say that. A lot of the guys, especially who I've coached that have been severely overweight, have just said, yeah, they just, like you say, instead of putting in the bin, they'll just finish a little bit, but a little bit every day. By the end of the week, it's another few meals on top of your week. So yeah, it's I'm glad you brought that one up. What would you say then? Let's say middle-aged guy listening to this, and he's kind of like not full of motivation because there's no reason to be, there's no goal or whatever, out of shape, in bad habits, tired. Like, where should he possibly look at starting? And more importantly, like why? Like, why is it important in the middle years of your life, any stage of your life, to be eating well and be healthy and be fit?
So, for a start, they probably know all the reasons that they should be doing it. You know what I mean? Like, if you're overweight, especially as you get to that age, like there's loads of like silent killers you will never know about till it comes for you. So, like we talked about right at the beginning of the podcast, like blood pressure. Like, you don't know what your blood pressure is now. I don't know what my blood pressure is now. Most people never ever have a clue. They don't even know what it means, even when they go to the doctors and they get it measured. But the more overweight you get, the more your blood pressure is going to increase. And that's something that's going to get you. It's like other stuff, especially if they've got kids. Like, what will kind of get a lot of guys is like when the kids become toddlers and they can't play with them, can't chase after them, can't pick them up above their heads, can't throw them. Like, sometimes it's a case of like, it's not even a health. Like, do you want to be the dad that's like has to sit at the side of the play park while all the other dads run around and play football and play with the kids? Like, you're going to go to sports days, do you want to have to not participate with your kid because you're so overweight? Like, and your kid's got to be the kid whose dad doesn't participate because, like, how what's your kid going to feel like when that happens? Like, there's the other side of people as well who are like, look, mate, like, if you want to get in shape because you want to dominate sports day, like, you want to win sports day for your kid. You want to destroy all of the dads. You know what I mean?
Well, I think if you have both, dude, then you've got a real. I always say, if you can get like the pain that you've just mentioned of like you might not be able to play with your kid, man. But and that whole like, I'm going to dominate the other motherfucking dads. Like, if you can get like the pleasure and the pain like simultaneously, working, then boom, you've got momentum.
Yeah, there's like the saying, isn't it? Like it's not enough that you know what you're running away from. You need to know what you're running towards.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing there that you're doing there. The other side of it is like I've had conversations with people where it's kind of like, they've got kids, they're watching their dads play with the kids. Like generally the generation above us was still quite active, they would still physically do things around the house, like, and all that kind of stuff. So they generally play with their kids and stuff. It's like, you won't be able to do that for your kids. You probably won't even see your grandkids if you don't sort it out. Like, this isn't like you're trying to scare somebody. It's just the harsh realities of it. Like, and you can guess your life expectancy, how much like you're knocking off. Like, I know it's quite morbid and sad, but like, say, like, one of the things that like really shocked me was like when my dad passed away, he like was slightly overweight. I would never say he was like obese or overweight stuff. Like he went to the gym, he walked, he was dead active. But they literally took 12 years off his life expectancy. Like when like they did like his coroner report and stuff like that for how overweight he was. Like he was smoking. They took another 20 off that. So if you think life expectancy for males, like 83, I think in the UK. Like when I look at it, like my dad was like 65. Like he was probably lucky to be there based on their calculations. You know what I mean? Like it's
So
like this
young.
is, like
oh, they're so young now.
Yeah, like that's real. Like and like in like there's like all kind of things like this. This is like not trying to scare somebody or be like overly thing. It's just facts that you're going to have to do it. But a lot of it is like kind of like shame led. Like when you go on holiday with your kid, like do you not want to be the person who takes their shirt off in the pool? Or can run around and play with the kid in the swimming pool or stuff like that, or do physical activities or whatever it is. Or even for some people, it's like, look, like when you go to like, Alton Towers and stuff, you can't fit in the rides. Like, there's like a limit in that kind of stuff,
Yeah, I did the Zip World in Wales a few weeks ago, and there was a guy who turned up to do it with his family, and he weighed too much, man. And part of me was like heartbroken for the guy, like because it was quite sad. He's with his family, and then part of you thinks, but like you can do something about this, man. It's like, but you touched on the word shame there. Shame's a big driver, man. I know shame is the main reason I got my ass in gear when I was 28, 29. Shamed of the way I was behaving. And I think people do get to that stage where they're ashamed of the way they're like, literally ashamed of the way they look. Like, disgusted. When some people can't look in the mirror, some people, as soon as the camera comes out, they're gone. They don't want to see what they've become. And it's a tricky fine line, this, because you almost have to go there and touch on it with them and go, look what's happened. Like, feel the pain. Like, you need to feel the pain, otherwise you're never going to move. And it's hard to take a person there without destroying them, but you kind of have to go in the pain you don't want to look if you want to find what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and that exists at all levels, like it's kind of like I still work with athletes now, or like people who are like the top of the sports. They might not be full-time athletes, but they might be very competitive in their space or whatever. Like, man, I'm so out of shape, like like I'm really embarrassed about how I look, like I used to be so much better. And these guys are like in shape, you know what I mean? Like if you take like the general population, I was like, look, mate, go to a centre park somewhere, go to a public pool, and just look around. Like I guarantee you are the most jacked person there.
Like, for sure, dude. I think you're right. I think like even when I take my shirt off, I'm still like sucking my abs in and tensing up because it's just so unrelaxed because of like But I bet, talking about shame, like you could probably be an Olympic silver medalist and still feel shame because you haven't got gold. So everyone, you're a hero, a super athlete, and you haven't won gold, so you're a failure. Like Do you know what I mean? So I think you're right. I never really thought about it like that. It's shame driven.
Everybody's kind of got it, and it's sometimes it's like a case of like whose opinion do you value, and that's like a whole different conversation and stuff like that. It's like when people get so like shame is like a good thing and a good motivator, but sometimes it's kind of like if it's preventing you from doing stuff, like why do you really give a shit about other people's opinion and and that kind of stuff. Like, but when it comes back to like motivators and stuff like that, it's all kind of different. Tips that they can do. It's small habits built over consistency. I like to start with like steps. I think it's really good because it's dead easy for people to do. Like it's dead easy to track over time. I'll look at my steps and I'll probably do like not a huge amount, probably like 12, 13,000 steps a day on average. Like apart from like weekends where like I'm playing with my kids more and it jumps up like 25,000 steps a day because I'm just sprinting around after two toddlers all day. But it's kind of like, that's a really easy thing to measure. Like water, like start with there. Like hydration's a massive thing. You won't feel as hungry, you'll look better, you'll feel better, you'll sleep better. Everything that we do is kind of done on water. Have a 2 litre thing of water, when it's gone, like it's gone. You've done your job for the day. Doesn't matter if you down it in a wanna or ideally spread it through the day. And then just build on like habits. I'm going to have a vegetable with every meal, a different veggie with every meal. Even if you're still having fish fingers and chips, just have some peas with it as well. Like start there, and build on it from there.
Cool. So you've got your water bottle next to you, right?
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
It is because I melted. It's like a very fancy Vimto 2 litre Vimto bottle that is now empty and being reused.
So I always again encourage that. So it's in front of you, it's visible, and you can see through. So you can see that you've got 2 litres of water, and you can see where it's at. So when we talk about strategy and that, these little things can really help people, can't they? It's like, have the bottle at your desk, make sure it's see-through, set an alarm on your phone, put a little post-it note out, almost like you coach yourself. Because when we're trying to create a new habit, obviously a habit is something we do without thinking. So we need to get you to that level. You're not going to get there just by saying, I need to drink water, right? So
no.
These little strategies, if people are listening, these little things, these little nudges, little alarms, little post-it notes, half of the battle is remembering to do the new habit. So if you can set those touches up, this is when we talk about strategy. You've got to get those little things in place. Otherwise, just remembering, which is what most people do. Most people have no strategy or a terrible one. And, you want to make these good habits easy.
And it's kind of like stuff, especially like people who work a lot, who are like very driven, like the kind of, people who've got successful businesses and that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's the case of remember, like you need to stop and eat, because what happens is these guys go through like long periods of either not eating or deep work or whatever it may be. Then it gets to like mid-afternoon, like, oh my God, I'm starving. I'm just going to reach for the nearest thing or the most convenient thing. Or I'm driving between meetings. I'm like unbelievably hungry. It has to be a Mackey's drive-through, or whatever it is. It's kind of like goes back to, again, like routine and being prepped for it. Like
what excuses will you not stand for, Mike? So mine is I haven't had time to drink water today. That's one I'm like, you're not getting away with that with me. That was a terrible one.
No, like it's a bit of a weird one. So it's not that there's like no excuses that I won't tolerate. It's that you've got to realize that they're excuses and be honest with yourself. Like it's like that's not a priority for me. Like don't say you don't have time for it. Just say that wasn't a priority for me today, and then we can be honest with each other about it. So if you say like, I didn't drink enough water that day, right? I didn't have time, or I didn't get all my meals in, I didn't have time. No, what you say, it wasn't a priority for me on that day, which is fine, okay? But we're being honest with each other when it comes to it. So going back to every goal has a price. Your like price might be higher than mine or lower than mine for the same goal, whether it's losing weight, building muscle, building a big business, no matter what it is. Everybody has a price they need to pay for everything. And unfortunately, the world's not fair, so everybody's price is different. Yeah. If you're not prepared to pay it, you can't have it. That's just the universe's law. Unfortunately, it's not mine. But just be honest with yourself. If you're not prepared to pay it, then you're not prepared to pay it. That's fine.
You find out by trying, right? So, some goals you say, I want the outcome so bad, I will do whatever it takes to get there. So your athlete will have that mindset. You tell me what to do, and I'll fucking do it.
Yeah.
I think other people would rather, or some people would rather know, well, tell me what I've got to do to get the outcome. And I think that's the difference between these people that will smash through a wall to get what they want versus the person who sits back a little bit more and says, well, this is what I'm willing to do, and what results that going to get me.
But it's kind of like knowing, especially when you deal with people, like what you're not willing to do. So what isn't feasible for you? Like, let's be honest, you know what I mean? And like, you might turn around and go like, what are your priorities? And like, some people would like, when the uber motivated, be like, like losing weight's my number one priority. But when you talk to them and go, well, actually, running your business, then your kids, then your wife, then losing weight's priority. Or it even might be, like actually, my family, playing golf, then losing weight is my priority. It's like, let's be honest with what it is, you know what I mean? And where things are. And that affects like how fast or slow or what measures we need to be able to take to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So someone who's like, it genuinely is their number one priority will probably be highly motivated. They're like, athletes, etc., and they'll be able to do things fast and go a bit quicker. If it's like their fifth priority in life, it's going to take them a bit longer. But it's like, we need to be on the same page, and we need you to be honest with yourself before we can start moving forward with it.
Yeah, man. I mean, what are you willing to do is my favorite question. Like, not what could, should, would you do? Like, what are you willing to do is it's the only question you need to find out. Really, I think that's the number one.
It's kind of like even this stuff like, okay, well, I'll absolutely get my steps in every day. Right. If it gets to the end of the day, you've been super busy, you haven't done it, absolutely pissing it down outside. Are you going outside to walk? Or it's snowing, or, oh no, I'm not doing that, right? So you're not prepared to do anything to get it in. Are you prepared to walk up and down your hall 5,000 times to get your steps in, and won't go out in the rain? Oh, well, I'm not doing that either. Right, okay. So there's another thing you're not prepared to do. Like, we need to be honest with ourselves and what we're prepared to do.
Yeah.
And again, all of these are fine. There's no right or wrong answer versus it, because everybody's different. Everybody's priorities are different.
Yeah,
but the effort that you put in dictates how the results you get and how fast that you'll be able to get them. You know what I mean?
I think this is why it's good to look at obstacles from the very off, because I think people won't even think about the things you've just mentioned. Like, well, if it rains, I've just committed to doing 10,000 steps every day. Yeah. If it rains, am I still going to go out and do my 10? Because that usually is there for the excuse when it comes. So you're right. I think laying down all these, foreseen obstacles and then coming up to solutions with them, I think that helps you determine what you are and what you're not willing to do. Because ultimately, I think, like, we all know people that talk. Like, we all talk too much. I talk too much. Most people talk too much. You only really find out what someone's values are and what they really care about, and, like you said, what they prioritize by stepping back and watching what they do. So this is what I love about this game. It's you show what's important to you by what you do with your habits and your routine. So everything you do each day, you can ask, is it getting me closer or further away? I don't really like to think of good and bad habits. It's just, they get me what I want. If they're not, we need to look at changing them. If they are, can we expand on them and do them more?
Yeah, and sometimes it is being honest with people, you know what I mean? Like, like I speak with a lot of guys that are used to when we used to, like 7 hours ago, I'm going to be world champion and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, brilliant. So how many times a week are you training? I train 3 times a week. I was like, you're nowhere near.
Yeah.
Like, you're not good. I'm sorry. I hate to be the person who tells somebody they can't achieve the goal, because, like, that's a horrible thing to do. But in the reality of the situation, like, other people are doing 10 plus sessions a week and you're doing 3.
Yeah.
You need to, you would need them to stop training for 3 years to catch them up. Like,
you find out how serious someone is at that point, right? Because he either goes, I'm training 10 times, or he goes, oh, right, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Shattered my dreams. I'm off to do something else. You find out how serious he is by his actions, right?
Yeah. And then your options there is like, right, okay, this is the price for it. So are you going to level up and try and do 10 sessions? Or are you going to realize, okay, well, actually, I want to do 3. Like, I'm happy, contributes positively in my life. It's a great hobby. I still have time for everything else. There's nothing wrong with that. You can participate in something and not want to be the best in the world. You can have hobbies and interests and fun, which, which is only, it's weirdly only in some sports, but not in others. You know what I mean? Like, so nobody expects, I'm going to start playing football on Sunday league, and if I'm not Ronaldo, then, that's the only goal for it. There's, I just want to be able to go and have a kick around my mates. I'll play 5-a-side at the weekend or something like that. It's a really strange thing.
Yeah, but I think what crushes most people, so their expectations of they who wouldn't want to get in badass shape? Like, who wouldn't want?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so most guys probably do, but I think there's a misalignment between what most people want and what they're actually willing to do to get. Like you say, they say the price of admission is very rarely paid. It's like people don't actually want to do what's required to get the outcome, yet they still want the outcome, and that's the frustration.
It is making people aware of actually what it is. For some people that I work with, some people can get lean and maintain 6-packs a lot easier than others. Everybody can get it after a certain point and stuff like that, but some people are more genetically dispositioned to it.
Yeah.
Some people, it's being honest with them and saying, look, you can absolutely have this, but you are going to have to really be dialed in to get there. You know what I mean? You're going to have to be restrictive. You're going to have to make this a top priority in your life. Say top 3 priority, top 2 priority. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z, or you're going to have to do it at a lesser scale for a longer period of time. But either way, the price needs paying. You can do it shorter for more, or longer with less. Is that all right?
I agree with you on that one. I like that phrase. The price needs paying. I'm going to start using
it does. I wish it wasn't the case. I wish there was like a cheat code for it, but you can't like to do it and the most frustrating thing for everybody is that like the people that you see on social media, their prices are generally, especially being in shape and ripped and all this kind of stuff, is they may be cheating with things that you like might not necessarily be doing, but their price might be low on that particular thing.
You mean taking steroids?
Yeah, they could be, or they could just naturally be like, have great genetics and, stay lean regardless of what they eat and build muscle. You know what I mean? Like we've all got that friend who can stay lean no matter what they do.
Yeah, I think being geared up. I think I could spot the difference now, but like you say, for general pop, maybe not. So yeah, in fact, you often get like the world class bodybuilders on stage, and then you hear like your friends say, "Are they actually think they're on gear?" And obviously, but I think there's that. Yeah, I think that's a whole different topic. But you're right; it's good lighting as well, Mike.
Massively.
Yeah. So it's
no one takes their like worst photos and puts them online. You know what I mean? Like
I wouldn't dare, man. I wouldn't dare.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
But that's the thing, and like you're seeing people whose like price to pay for those things might be a lot lower than what yours is. You know what I mean? They like may only have to train like 3 times a week to be in great shape. You might have trained 5 times a week. You know what I mean? Like to achieve the same thing, you might have to work twice as hard for the same results. But you may be like unbelievable at business and they like have a great body, but like live with the mum and dad and like have no money or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, so, or like live in squalor or whatever it might be. Like everybody's price for everything's different and it's frustrating, but it's just the way the world works, unfortunately.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Try not to focus too much on that. Yeah.
No, but it's kind of like the good thing is the one thing that you have controllable over all of it is how hard you work. Yeah. Like I think everybody like if everybody truly gave the best at something and still fell short, it'd be all right. Like
inside, I don't think inside you're proud, aren't you? Inside, you've done something. And again, I think that's another thing that crushes a lot of guys when they know they're not doing their best. Like they just know they're not giving anything, nowhere near what they could give. And I think that's quite punishing, especially like I say when you get into your 30s and 40s, because you start to realize that you're not going to be around forever. Like you don't think like that when you're 20, but when you're 35, you start to think, "Fuck, I'm going to be 40 soon. That's halfway of my life if I'm lucky."
But it's kind of stuff like, again, like if you had steps to do or cardio or training to do and you didn't go out in the rain and do it, the next day you know whether you did. Regardless of what you say or post or say to your coach or whatever, is you know if you did or you didn't. It's the lies that you tell to yourself that's going to get like make or break you. But if you do the work, you're probably going to be all right. Even if you don't get the result, like you'll be okay. What crushes people is when they don't do the work and don't get the result.
100%. 100%.
Don't be mad over the results that you didn't get because of the work you didn't do.
Agree on that one, dude. It's like we've been rattling on for over an hour and a half now.
Sorry, mate.
No, don't be, because I've got a list of questions here and I haven't even asked any of them yet. So we'll play that for episode 2. What's your downfall, dude? Just before we finish, like, what's your advice when it comes to food? If there's one food that you're going to demolish and can't control, and that's going to make
sun-dried tomatoes.
Really?
Yeah. If there's like a jar of sun-dried tomatoes in the house, I mean, but like in a wanna, like like 2 or 3 there, 2 or 3 like again, like if there's a jar in the house, like it'll be gone in like a day or so.
Yeah, if that's put together with feta cheese, I'm with you. I think on their own, I'm not sure, but I used to love feta cheese and a sun-dried tomato on top.
Or something like like chorizo or something like that, or like cured meat or something. If that's in like a couple of slices, a couple of slices of that. Like it's not like all in one go. It's just every time I'm in the fridge for something or I'm in the kitchen, I'll have a couple of bits or a couple of bits.
There's a couple of things. There's a lot of green veg in my fridge because I'm not gonna like overdose on that. But there's a few things that I can't like when I'm carving up like a turkey joint or a pork shoulder, like that's when I've got to be careful, because you cut a little slice, and you're like, well, that's too small to put on a sauce plate. I'll just have that, and then there's a little bit left, and before I've served up the joint, I've ate fucking half of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same bit. But the way I've kind of got around that is that, like, if I because what I generally do is sometimes like I cook up joints of meat for meal prep and like slice it up and portion it up just because.
Eat half of it.
Yeah. But what I think is, like, I only buy like enough that I know is going to last me the week, so I'm not going back and buying any more. So even if I eat like a few slices there, cumulatively over the week, I'm still eating the same amount.
Yeah, no.
Where it kind of gets you down is if you eat half of it and then have to go back to the shop for more. That's when they get you. I
bet it's dinner time for you now, right?
It is, yeah. My missus will be upstairs, like, starving to death right now. She'll be like, cursing me. No, mate, I told her.
What you got? Just have to wait up. What's a nutritionist eating for his dinner?
It's not even really, like, it's really boring, mate. It's just like chicken and veggies. I did some slow cooked like chicken in this kind of like tomato sauce that I made up just in the slow cooker, and it's just that with some veggies. That sounds not even fancy.
Yeah, mate, I had a plain chicken breast with a couple of baby bells shoved in on with some greens earlier, but actually a bit of barbecue. One is my downfall: barbecue sauce.
You can get like skinny food corn stuff now, do like 0 calorie. I've never tried it though, so I don't know how good it is.
Well, I get a reduced sugar and salt one, but when you put twice the amount on that you normally would, it probably just accumulates to the same amount of sugar and salt. So.
Yeah. I started by like the like a reduced sugar, like strawberry jam, because my son's got a thing for jam on toast at the moment. So
I know like
that. Yeah. So, but it's only like for like 1 teaspoon, like 15 grams, like 26 calories. So it's like nothing. So.
Well, it depends how many spoonfuls you put on. See,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Spoonful of jam to me is like I'll scoop as much as I can get on that tablespoon.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the thing that?
Oh, if it goes like that across the top, and you're left with like that much.
Yeah.
That ain't me, right? Just slap it on.
If you ever want to see how far removed you are from reality, just measure out what a serving of peanut butter ever is supposed to be.
Yeah, well, I've got a peanut allergy, so that'll never happen.
However, right, okay.
I have to weigh my oats out because 30 grams of oats or 40 grams of oats is pathetic. So I have 130 grams, which apparently is like 4 servings. I can't get my head around that. And never weighed dried pasta either. It's just not worth it.
No, waste of time.
It is a waste of time. And you get that Parmesan cheese on it after, mate. Oh. And chorizo. This is what I mean about chorizo. You can literally put it in anything. Like, so breakfast, omelette, chicken and chorizo. Unbelievable. Pasta and chorizo. I can't have it in the house, mate. Can't have it.
Yep.
That's what I mean. My discipline's not that great, actually. I just don't. I make it easy to stick to my plan. I don't make it.
You just don't get it in the house. You know what I mean? Like, if I look in the fridge and I've got like chicken that I need to cook up or ribeyes, then I know which one I'm going to be reaching for. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely. But I'll do what you say on a Saturday, like afternoon. If I want something that evening, I'll go then and just buy my Halo ice cream, my pizza, and my chicken wings. And that's it. Like, I just buy that, eat it, and then Sunday morning I get up and I crack on with whatever's normal.
Yeah. A good tip as well for people who've got kids is only buy enough like kid type snacks for the kids. So like, let's say they go to school and have packed lunches, like you've only got like so many cheese strings or so many baby bells, because what happens if you pinch start from them, you start robbing from your kids, and then when you start having conversations that people are actually stealing from their own children, it's a bit harsh.
It happens all the time. But talking about like men being boys earlier, why is it like food like that, like cheese strings and turkey Twizzlers and chicken dinosaurs? I just would love to just demolish all that food. Man.
It just takes you back. It's same as like cottage pie and ham and cheese toasties. They just take me back to like just.
I think that's food. I was brought up on microchips and microwaves. Like,
I was just talking about microchips the other day. Like I had micro burgers. I don't know. I don't know if it's still a thing. Like, do you remember like Finder's crispy pancakes and things like that? Like,
I used to have that with microchips, but microchips, salt and vinegar, and then so we used to have micro wings as well. McCain's did fucking micro everything back in the day.
Micro everything. Micro pizzas we used to get.
Micro pizzas. I had micro jacket potatoes. Everything like was micro, and that was me sorted for most nights of my life. So, Mike Leng, you're gonna have to come back on again. I'm sorry, I've done this to the last few guests where I've done some prep. And I have actually nothing off it, and we've been talking about existential angst and all sorts tonight. So.
Sorry, mate. No, come back, mate, anytime.
No, it's all good. So it'd be great to have you back on, and we'll go over some more and give out some more specifics. But Mike Leng, you're a fucking legend. Where can people find you on IG? I think I've got it here.
Just Unorthodox Nutrition.
There you go. Scrolling at the bottom. Give this fella a follow. He's brilliant at what he does. Go and check him out.
Thank you very much.
Mike Leng, I appreciate your time. Go and enjoy your chicken and vegetables, my friend. Apologise to my wife for me. I hope you don't get into trouble.
Should be fine.
Mate, you're a good man. Thanks for joining me, man.
Right.
Appreciate
Cheers,
it.
man.
Thank you, Mike.
See you, bud.